When I had come home from the US back to Nigeria, it was because at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard, where I was both a student and then working with Jeffrey Sachs, who is a professor, a renowned professor. We started, Jeffrey Sachs began to take interest in my country because I spoke a lot about my country, which he at that time considered a basket case. He thought that my country is, within research and academic environment, when you look at the story of Nigeria and what the distortion that oil and the corruption that it has bred has gone to the country. Within the academic circle, it is considered that Nigeria is stuck and that it will never break out of its low equilibrium, except if something unusual would happen. But I continued to be positive about my country, and that got Jeffrey, looking at some of the numbers about my country, and we would do those kinds of analysis. One of the analysis that we did was the debt sustainability analysis of Nigeria, just because Jeffrey was surprised that we had an opening when the then head of state of the country died, and Nigeria became a democracy overnight. And for him, it was like, wow, you're very positive about your country, and it appears like that same God that you keep telling me about does listen to you. So it was quite funny. And so during that period, we then decided that the best thing that we could do to help that new democracy was to look at how the US could champion a debt reduction for Nigeria, because we looked at the oil per capita for Nigeria, and it was at that time it was less than $87 per citizen. The idea of a very rich Nigeria was proven to be wrong. And so, we knew that if Nigeria didn't get a debt reduction, because our analysis showed that Nigeria was using 7 times what it was spending on health for education, on health, for debt service. It was using 8 times what it was spending on education for debt service. How could the country grow, in that context? So Jeffrey, who was very close to the Clinton White House, got us talking with them, and they were interested in looking at the possibility of a debt cancellation for Nigeria, but they were looking at it from the perspective that Nigeria is so important in West Africa, and that if Nigeria's democracy could be solid, then Africa's security and stability could be guaranteed. But of course, the Clinton White House was persuaded, but not the Treasury Department, not the Congress. And so that led to ultimately my having to come back home to do something that would enable us gather some data that the new Nigeria of democracy was beginning to change the way it was using its own resources. Because the key issue was that the US leaders were saying that Nigeria was poorly using its resources, was corruptly using its resources, and therefore that if America gave a debt reduction to Nigeria, it would amount to moral hazard, and that they didn't want to have to take taxpayers' money in America and give to a country where the money would be misused or stolen. That made me come home. In coming home, it was really tough because I knew I was coming home into a political environment that was made up of actors that I had seen the way they hobnobbed with the military during the period of militarization. And so it took God showing me a picture similar to what happened in the case of Peter and God when he looked at all the animals and then said to God, I dare not touch any of these. And he said, do you call what I call clean unclean? And he said, you have to do this assignment to the Gentiles. That was a difficult one, but I had to ultimately answer that call to come home and begin the reform of the public procurement system so that we could improve the value for money. And once we began to improve value for money, it became a lot easier to engage those who had said that Nigeria was a basket case. The church is a very important part of the ecosystem of the nation. The church has moral suasion and influence that sometimes the authorities in power would not wield over citizens. And so that moral influence that the church wields can be used positively in many dimensions. For example, I think that the government did poorly in mobilizing and sensitizing the citizens on what was coming to us as COVID-19. That failure of political leadership to mobilize the citizens and to prepare us for the kinds of things that we would all need to do in order to fight together against this enemy called the coronavirus. That failure that failure could be addressed in many ways through the role that the church plays. And I think that I am very, very proud to say that in our own congregation, that is the Redeemed Christian Church of God, as a church globally, the leader of the church, Daddy Adeboye, has done very well in sensitizing the church community and telling us our responsibility. He has not in any way, he doesn't think that there is a tension between doing the things that are important to prevent the spread of COVID and our being, Christians. So our faith as well as our own responsibility as citizens, he's brought them in a very neat way to us. And so the people, when you see people in the Redeemed Christian Church of God, their attitude toward COVID-19 and the things that must be done, the church compliance with what the authorities say is necessary, you see that it is really gone brilliant. That's one. The second part is there is almost like a trade-off between livelihood and being alive as far as COVID is concerned. And that creates a very terrible tension that could undermine any effort at containing the spread. So what has the church, what is the role of the church in that instance? In that instance, the church becomes a supplier of comfort, right? Because the government and its fiscal condition means that it's not able to adequately cater to the needs of everyone who is at a low income category that needs some sustenance of livelihood in order to be able to comply with the stay-at-home order. So what did you see in the Redeemed Christian Church of God? All of our parishes were activated into centers of social safety, social protection. And so when government could not reach our congregations, who are a large portion of Nigeria's population, the church was reaching them. So that's the kind of role that the church plays. And then the church also plays the role of even improving the productivity of people in the low income, because it gives them not just a loaf of bread, but it gives them capacity to be able to enter the post-COVID era with the ability to earn a living. The third part of what the church does is that the church is a voice for national transformation and reformation. The church must not keep quiet when things are wrong in society, because none of the prophets of old are kept quiet when things were wrong in Israel. They would, Amos spoke against evil, right. Elijah spoke against evil, Elijah spoke against evil. And that is something that we see that we need to do in a very sensible way, in a way that does not undermine society, but in a way that rallies society into oneness. Then the fourth and final thing for me is that the church is a moral compass for society. The values of every society will ultimately shape how far the progress of that society can be. And the role of the church in getting the people who sit in church on Sunday to actually be Christians on Monday is important. You cannot be a church goer and call yourself a Christian. Your Christianity is what is reflected in the choices you make on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then when you get into church again on Sunday, for those who are Sunday medicine people. But for some of us, I mean, we are practically go to church every day. Well, so women face a significant barriers of entry into the political space. The number one and fundamental thing is, at the personal imposition of fear and of in a sense of an imposter syndrome. In other words, the women who could wake up and think, I'm not adequate enough to get into the political space. That's a personal barrier, and it's only the individual that can ultimately take that barrier away from themselves and, sweep away the things that are self-limiting them. So that's one. The second one is the social and cultural barrier, where people look at, somebody can look at a woman and say, oh, she's so ambitious. A woman it's not even ambition that drives most women. What drives most women is vision, not ambition. Ambition is where it is about yourself and your vainglory. Vision is where you look at your society and you feel that something is fundamentally wrong and that it must be addressed. A lot of women have issues in our society that worry them, especially issues that concern children, young people, and women. They want a different society, a society that provides equality of opportunity to everyone. Women are always tending toward wanting justice, not for themselves, but for others all the time. And so when women look at those challenges and they want to address them, it's not out of ambition, it's out of vision. They want a society that works. The third thing that poses a barrier of entry is that the political environment is so networked. It's networked against women. And so everything about that environment sort of wants to do things in opaque ways, in ways that are, nocturnal and all of that. And women frankly have no stomach for those kinds of contexts to operate within them. The fourth thing that the barrier would be issues of financing. Financing the political process can be totally exhausting. And so women are not people of deep pockets usually. And so they are going to need a lot of resources to be able to do that. The fifth thing is that women are very, women connect a lot, but women don't build structures out of their connections. And so making sure now that women would see the networks that they belong to as networks that need to be joined up and to have structure is an important part of building an ecosystem of support for women who wish to go into politics. So all of these, and then of course the religious angle. Some people would look at a woman who wants to run for office and say, oh, doesn't she have a husband? Is she going to be this and this? And what they do is that they forget that there was a Deborah in the book of the Lord, Deborah, who was the wife of Lapidot, who was a judge, who was a prophetess in Israel. God is ever interested in all of his children that he has put talents in, optimizing those talents. In my own case, I have been a very, very fortunate person in my relationship with my husband. My husband actually sees where I should be going before I sometimes even see it. So he pushes me in the direction of my purpose in life. And so that I don't have to worry myself as to, whether the man that is my husband is feeling threatened. My husband feels no threat whatsoever. My husband is bold. He embraces the idea that I have talents of leadership and that I must express those talents of leadership. And so it's important for society to validate our women. The more that husbands validate their wives, the better that it is for our society. The more that parents validate their daughters, the better for our society. Because frankly, in the eyes of God, leadership is gender neutral. My advice would be, is your life a purposeful one? You've got to, that's your own question to answer. Is your life purposeful? And is the purpose that you think that your life is for, is it a higher order purpose or is it a low intensity purpose? When your purpose is a higher order purpose, it is going to be very costly. Higher order purpose in life is costly. It requires everything of you. It requires your willingness to lay it all down. But the thing is that you ultimately end up fulfilling a really great purpose that would make your maker, at the end of it all, say, welcome, that good and faithful servant. Now enter into my kingdom, right? So I normally say to young people, according to the lectures that I give, I say to them, there are two assignments that were created to fulfill. The first one is our vocational assignment. The second one is our kingdom assignment. Our vocational assignment is often that assignment that God equipped us for from the very beginning. He put in us, according to you remember the parable of the talents in Matthew 25?
I do.
He put, a minimum of 1 talent is in each of us. None of those servants had 0 talent. At least one talent is in you. And that particular talent has to be optimized toward the fulfillment of a certain assignment that you've been created for. Now, you've got to figure out what it is by a conscious conversation that you have with yourself and your maker. Now, when you fulfill your vocational assignment in the way that I have said, the Lord has made the issue of poor governance of society to be a pain to me. No matter how I tried to ignore it, it would not leave me alone. It is that intense, that intense pain at seeing poor governance of society costing the poor their lives that drives me. It motivates me in everything that I do. I don't wake up in the morning thinking, what am I going to eat today? What am I going to wear today? Because the Bible already told me that if I don't waste my time being like a beggar, thinking of the things I would eat and the things I would wear, I would be able to have the freedom to fulfill the things that are of eternal value. So you must say to yourself, what is my vocational assignment? I believe that the Almighty God has ordered my steps in the fulfillment of my vocational assignment at different stages in my life. And I will continue to walk in the order of that fulfillment. So please find what your vocational assignment is, and the Almighty Himself would support you in the process of fulfilling it. There's never been a time in my life that I had to beg for a job. No, the only job I ever applied for in my life was when I had to train as a chartered accountant in Deloitte & Touche, and that was my first job after graduating my master's program. Now, all my other jobs that I have done, they were not jobs. I had come to the place of consciousness that I have an assignment in life. And so what God did was that I was always headhunted for all my assignments. I have never had to beg anybody for a job. I have never had to lobby for a job. I go on the basis of assignment. And the assignments, when they are ready for me to do, I get my assignment done. That's one. The second part is the kingdom assignment. The kingdom assignment is the one that I must fulfill in my understanding that there is a kingdom. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all other things shall be added unto you. Matthew 6:33. Now, in that kind of an understanding, I know that everything that has to do with my faith and the way that I honor my faith in my daily living, in the way that I am able to, through my life, expand the kingdom in the things I do, in the way I do the things that I do. I am basically a person of the kingdom. I am kingdom-minded. I know that my bus stop is not here on earth, that my bus stop is really when I go before my Father in heaven and He embraces me. And so my assignment on the kingdom is very important. It makes me not think about my title. It's not my title. It's not the fact that I was a worker, then I was a deaconess, and then I was an assistant pastor, and I am a full pastor. Those things don't matter. It's the content of my life as a person of the kingdom that matters. So once you think of it that way as a young person, and what I'm giving you is the story of my life. So I'm not telling you theory. I'm telling you that I minded a vocational assignment. I minded kingdom assignment. I minded these two things in ways that just kept anchoring on my belief that I was not created for to be another human being in the population of the world, but that I was created with purpose. And that's the way it has worked for me. First thing is, you don't just go from nothing to say, I'm going into politics. You've got to first of all be conscious. What is it that is the vision behind your wanting to go to politics? In my own case, if there is a thing where I have fought with God the most, it is in the matter of entering into politics. I've been in governance. I was always in governance, but politics, I hated it with the last blood in my vein, because I just thought there's nothing in politics that even speaks to my character, my kind of person. I cannot do politics. I was vehement about it. Now, at the point that I entered into politics, it was because I was now faced with a situation where, the pain was going to shock me. It was going to choke me. I was looking at our society, hearing people, including Christians, say things like, we'll go and vote the lesser of two evils. And I said, what? Did I just hear lesser of two evils? We agreed that something is evil and we're going to vote for that evil because it's a lesser evil. That really got to the place of choking. And then seeing that the country was in dire straits while we were saying this, I got to the point where, my husband's basic question to me was, you hate politics? I said, yes, of course, I hate politics. He said, yes. I said, but what do you hate more than you hate politics? He said, and I said, well, I hate what the politicians are doing in this country much more than I hate any other thing. So he said, okay, in which case, because you need to solve that particular problem, you may have to go into politics in order to solve it. And it was a very tough decision. So you must have something beyond the idea that, it would be good to go into politics. That won't give you staying power. All right. So that's number one. Number two is you must know your values that you're not prepared to negotiate. I was not ready to negotiate my values. So even though I went into politics, and ostensibly I had gone into politics on the platform of a party that, proved itself in the, by some of the things that it had done, it had rejected to go with its original co-founder back into PDP. That was a good sign for me. It had rejected to be co-opted into APC in 2015. That was a good sign for me that these people seem to be the people who want to stand on their own. But apparently, there was a threshold of endurance that it could cope with in terms of the usual transactional mindset of Nigerian politicians. And so when I finally was persuaded and I ran on their ticket, and it now became about money, and you have to bring money and that was not working for me, right? So I had to say to myself, am I prepared to compromise my values in order to run for this? And I came to the conclusion that I am never supposed to negotiate my values for anything. And so I had to step back. For you to step into politics, you must decide what values mean the most to you and that you're not prepared to negotiate and how far you can go. And then the third thing is that before you get to this point, it must be that you have built a certain record of caring about certain kinds of issues. Because you can't be in politics just to be like any other person. What are the issues that matter to you? And what is your track record of having faced those issues, even without political office? So the number 3 thing for me that I would say to anybody is, how have you used your office of the citizen well? There is an office of the citizen that you have, and that office of the citizen requires you to use your voice, to use your resource, whether it's time, it is talent, it is your money, to do certain things at the level outside of government that can make a difference in the lives of your fellow citizens. How much of that are you doing? And then the fourth one is to build for yourself an ecosystem of like-minded individuals that would be part of the ideals that you want to see take hold take foothold in our country. That's very key and critical. And, some people would say, but, I don't know what political party to join. Well, now I have learned that most of our political parties are merely vehicles of political transaction. So the idea that, you just join a party, you have to be very careful about that now. I have learned a very strong lesson. It's a lesson that every professional that wants to go into politics must. A wise person doesn't wait to go through the same thing before they learn. They learn out of the experience of other people. So the professionals who want to go into party politics, they have to think constructively in terms of what political platform they are going to run on. I don't want to ever run on a political platform where the people do not share the same kind of values as I do. They may say they care about Nigeria, they do this and that, but I must ask and be totally convinced, absolutely, without any iota of that the values that I stand with, if we say that this is the way, we're not moneyed people, we don't have money, we're going to build a political movement in the kind of way that the citizens themselves will be the ones that say, this is the kind of Nigeria we want, we're ready to work for it, and it means we don't need billions in order to win an election. We just simply need citizens who are activated into understanding their power to determine the democratic outcomes. If people don't share those kinds of values, it becomes harder for you to be able to go on a long journey with them. Finally, you must totally be in tune with your God. When I had to step down from running for presidency, and then I said to the Lord, what was it all about? And what was my journey? What lesson was I supposed to take from my journey? And it was simple. He said to me, you've always cried to me and said, you want a new Nigeria. Now, when you entered into politics, it was part of the process. People suddenly saw that an Oby Ezekwesili could run for politics in the land. That's a new thing that started. He said, when you were with that party and they were asking for this and that, and I was watching to see whether you were ready to trade your values in order to just continue, I was waiting. You did not do so. You refused to negotiate your values. I am proud that happened. And then he said, and when you were ready to lay it down, because it was tough to say, I am no longer running. After many people were excited about my running, and then to withdraw from the race was a painful and tough thing. But you know what? The Lord said to me that when you laid down your running for presidency, you made the sacrifice for a new Nigeria. Wow. And for me, that was just good enough. I had to lay it down as a sacrifice. And, he said, there is nothing that is new that you want that you can get without sacrifice. So I had to sacrifice. Recommendation to anybody is the book of all books. Look, my Bible gives me such guidance of life. It's unbelievable. You can imagine, I'm an avid reader, I'm an avid learner. But the book of books is your Bible, number one. Yeah, there's so much that I take from it. Then the number 2 book that I would recommend for people is a biography book. This Theodore Roosevelt, the former president of America, who was paralyzed and governed America from the wheelchair. You have to read his book. The Roosevelt biographies. That's a book to read because it teaches you character. For me, there's nowhere you can get to without character. You get to things, you become wealthy or you become famous without character. It won't last. It won't last. So this man was the epitome of character in the way that he looked at power and exercising it. So biographies are very important for me. Read the biography of Roosevelt, the 2 Roosevelts actually, Franklin and Theodore Roosevelt. And then read the biography of Winston Churchill. and then read the biography of Margaret Thatcher, how she came from, a very, not a, her background wasn't, a peerage background. It wasn't what you call this kind of grand background, but she was the daughter of a person of middle income class or even lower middle income. And yet she went on to become such an incredible leader of her country. So biographies are very important because they take you through real life experiences that matter. Another book that is a very small book, but it is such an interesting book, is by Malcolm Gladwell. So Turning Point. The tipping point. The tipping point enables you to understand how to be a driver of change and the kind of endurance that you require in order to get to a threshold where what you want to see happen then happens. The Tipping Point is an incredible book, and many other series that Gladwell has written. And then in terms of public policy, the book that I would recommend is a book by Gardner. Gardner writes so well about public policy, and when you read Gardner's book, you would understand policy from a perspective of not just being a person marginal to it. You would almost find yourself as a policy maker, just looking at the different issues in policy and how it relates to the everyday life of citizens. Lord, we just want to thank you. Known unto you are your ways. You are a purposeful God. And I know that everyone who tuned in to be a part of this program today, it was because you purposed for them to be part of it. And so we're thanking you that all the lives that are part of this program, that you're definitely going to touch these lives. Because you say that you know of us, you know of every one of us, you know even to the extent of the palm of our hands, Lord, and so you know all the hair of our heads. So we just know that concerning these your children, you will meet them at the earnest desire of their heart. And my prayer, Lord, is that you will do exceedingly much more than they could ever have imagined or thought before they came on this program in their lives. I am asking that they would hear your voice as He speaks to them, saying to them, go to your, as they turn to their right and as they turn to their left, you will direct them in the way in which they should go. And you did say to us that if any man lacks wisdom, let him ask, because the Father above is able to give us wisdom that is from above, not the human wisdom, which we can get easily through knowledge, but that divine wisdom that will order us and give us a place of eminence in your kingdom. That's what we're trusting you to do for your children. And I just declare upon them that greater than that you have done in my life shall you do in their individual lives. Amen. I declare that your glory shall be upon them. It will rise upon them and lead them onto greater heights and greater accomplishments, not for their self, not for vainglory, but for the fulfillment of your purpose in your mighty name of Jesus. And we give our nation to you. We ask you to bless Nigeria. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. Blessed is our people unto whom God will not impute iniquity. There is so much iniquity in our land, but we ask you, Lord, to please show your mercy unto Nigeria. Amen. Help us so that this COVID situation will come under complete control, and let us defeat this virus. For you say that this plague shall not be upon us. Let it disappear, Lord, in the name of Jesus. Protect your people and let your name be glorified forever. In Jesus' mighty name we have prayed. Amen.